Today, we welcome Jacquie Ottman, creator of WeHateToWaste.com, founded in 2012. It builds on her decades of experience helping major companies and organizations promote greener practices through J. Ottman Consulting. Through this platform, she aims to foster smarter living and inspire creative solutions for a zero-waste world, ensuring resources for future generations. Please welcome Jacquie.
Hello, Emma, and everyone else who has joined us. Can you all hear me and see me?
We can hear and see you, and your slides look great.
Terrific. Thank you so much. What a nice introduction. Thank you for that, Emma. And thank you to everyone who is joining us today or listening in on the recording. I'm so excited to be able to share my thoughts and ideas, especially with you all at Green America. I've known the organization for a very, very long time, and I understand how much you all do to fight food waste and climate change. So, with the holidays just around the corner, it's a perfect time to be thinking about how to make the most of our leftovers. Let me ask you, how many of you have favorite traditions around holiday leftovers? I wish I could see you all raising your hand, but perhaps it's a soup that you look forward to making or a special family casserole. Or maybe you like to gather friends and neighbors together to share your leftovers after the formal holiday. So please feel free to tell us in the chat what you look forward to. I'd love to know. And are some of you perhaps looking to cook up something different this year? I'm sure you can all pick up a few new ideas from all of us this afternoon. So I'm going to start by sharing some particular inspiration from home cooks around the world who literally, for centuries, have been making 7 now very beloved dishes for transforming their own leftovers. Of course, throughout time, no one could waste even a morsel of food. And this challenged home cooks like all of us who want to make sure our families are fed meals that are not only nutritious but delicious. But I'm not going to stop there. Leftovers are way too important for us to just focus today on what goes on in our own kitchens. So I'm going to conclude by sharing 3 of my wishes for programs and policies that can help make our food culture here in the US a lot more leftovers friendly once again. Hopefully, these wishes of mine will spur some new initiatives at Green America or within your own communities. But first, let's start with a little context. Food waste, of course, is a huge problem here in the US as it is around the world. The US government and the UN are issuing far reaching policies and initiatives for cutting down on food waste now, so there's enough food and fertile cropland for future generations. Of course, we all got a little taste of food shortages during the pandemic, and it wasn't fun. Now, food insecurity is even higher, and food prices are climbing. Yet, 1/3 of all the food that we buy at the supermarket still winds up in the trash. And that doesn't count all the food that's left on the fields, lost in distribution, or thrown away by supermarkets and restaurants. Those ancient home cooks I was talking about didn't worry about climate change, but we do. These days, when our food gets to a landfill, it degrades into methane, a pollutant that's up to 80 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So, who's throwing away all this food? The answer may surprise you. It's actually us, all of us. Check out that big green wedge on the pie chart on the right. It shows that just looking at NYC, among the 3 different cities the Natural Resources Defense Council researched a few years ago, over half or 50% of all the food waste that came out of New York was actually thrown out from homes. And that's more food than was thrown away by restaurants, cafeterias, catering halls, and all the other places represented by the other colors that you see in this pie chart that prepare food to eat outside the home combined. It won't surprise you to know that one of the biggest drivers of this food wasted by our homes is leftovers. Of course, restaurants have professionals in their kitchens who know how to turn what's left over into something usable. They call it soup du jour, and they have strong economic incentives to do so. But that's not always the case in our homes, whether we're cooking up too much for company, over ordering on the takeout, or stashing uneaten food in the fridge, but never wind up eating it. Let's take a deeper dive. As you can see on the chart on the left, nearly $2,000 of what the average American household spends on food winds up as waste. Now look to the chart on the right, and you'll see that almost a quarter of this, 23%, represents perfectly good food that was thrown out in the form of prepared foods and leftovers. So what can we save by eating up leftovers is really immense. And that cost will only go up as prices continue to rise and as we eat more food in restaurants and via delivery. Let's take this a little deeper. To paraphrase Wikipedia, leftovers can be defined as the edible remains of a meal, stored with the intention of eating them later. So we're talking about what's left in the casserole after supper's over. But I think the definition should also include the raw materials, that ingredients that didn't make it into the mixing bowl. You know, the rest of that bunch of celery, what's left in the can of tomato paste when the recipe called for just 1 tablespoon, and that half a container of heavy cream. And that's for just those of us who cook. These days, we're spending more money on eating in restaurants and ordering in than on food we're preparing at home. So leftovers also need to encompass the food we bring home in a doggy bag, as well as any prepared food left over from a food delivery. Now let's talk about this qualifier, edible. You might ask, what about composting? Why not? Composting is getting a lot of attention these days. Here in the city, it's now mandatory for all 8.5 million residents to collect their food scraps for composting or bioenergy. This, of course, is a good thing because composting creates an important soil amendment and biofuels can be used to heat our homes. But is composting the best possible way to dispose of our leftovers? Not really. According to the EPA's wasted food scale, maybe you're familiar with this new U-shaped diagram that replaced the triangle you may be more familiar with. Composting is just a step or two above landfilling for food disposal. Are you surprised to see how far down it is on the list? To be clear, composting is best for food that's inedible, but it's a very different case for food that's edible. Edible food should be eaten. It should never see a trash can or even a compost bin. As you can see on the darker green areas on the left side of this new wasted food scale, you really want to prevent edible food from going to waste. You want all that food that's fit for consumption to fill bellies, even those of animals, so the nutrition that food contains can be put to beneficial use. So, how can we encourage people to eat up their leftovers? The world doesn't lack for ideas, but first we have to get many people over the hurdles. Here's a few of the biggest ones. I'm still searching for the specific numbers, but it seems clear from the trends that the moms who now work, the grannies who live across the country, and the teachers who are teaching computer skills are no longer teaching our kids to cook. Let me ask you, how many young people do you know think the best way to reheat pizza is in a microwave? Second, relatedly, many Americans don't know how to properly store food so it will last more than a day or two in the fridge. And they also misconstrue date labels thinking they represent an expiration date that's prompting them to throw that food away. And then, of course, there's the emotional side of leftovers, the boredom associated with eating the same thing again, the fear of getting sick, or even the shame experienced by some when asking for a doggy bag. Thankfully, leftovers are getting some attention these days. During the pandemic, of course, leftovers were all over social media as well as on the morning news. Lots of celebrity chefs and food writers and TikTokers still like to talk about how much they love leftovers. But now, with so many more reasons than just empty store shelves, we need to turn up the dial, engaging as many cooks as possible with new ways to keep leftovers top of mind. And if we all pitch in, we can make a difference. I personally think that the best kind of encouragement we can give to Americans is to simply demonstrate how leftovers can be delicious. I ask you, whoever throws away delicious food, and those of you, and I'm sure there are many of you on this call, know that leftovers can, in fact, be delicious. And luckily, inspiration abounds for making leftovers delicious, especially if we look around the world and throughout history. That's where we'll find the 7 dishes I mentioned that home cooks have been using to transform their own leftovers for centuries. These dishes represent the perfect inspiration since Americans are always up for trying new foods, especially foods from other cuisines, as well as food that reminds us of our own native food cultures. Are you hungry to learn more, Green America? Let's take a deep dive into each of these 7 dishes before concluding with those wishes. Now, starting in ancient times, food cultures in China, India, and the Middle East developed specific dishes for rolling over the leftover bits of this and that and odds and ends from last night's dinner and transforming it into something entirely new for tomorrow's hearty breakfast or lunch. Over the centuries, many of these inventive dishes have spread around the world, taking on the flavors and textures of regional specialties. And with meat being pretty rare over the centuries, many of them adapt very well to vegetarian and vegan options too. What are these dishes? You know them well. They're the savory pies and tarts that represent a perfect spot to tuck in the leftover chicken and vegetables. The fried rice that the Chinese have been ingeniously using for centuries to repurpose day-old rice. The savory soups and stews that can be recharged seemingly forever. The flavorful curries that were first created in India that have now found their way onto more tables in the UK than bangers and mash. They're also the grain bowls, beloved by monks for balance, that the health conscious among us eat today to stay fit. They're the omelets and frittatas, chock full of leftover meats and veggies that we happily consume with a mimosa or two for a laid back brunch. And finally, they're the breaded fish cakes, golden fried with an egg on top, that make a great meal anytime. You've likely enjoyed every one of these dishes and likely made them yourself. But what you may not yet have tried are the many exciting permutations of these dishes that have sprung up around the world. That's the news I want to share with you through the rest of this presentation, starting with soup. The scorch marks on the ceramic pot you see on the bottom left suggest that soups may have been invented in China during an ice age as long ago as 20,000 BC. Perhaps it started as a poor man's stew without much more in the bowl than some weak flavorings. Soup is universal. It is consumed by young and old, the healthy and the sick. Every food culture around the world has soups of all kinds, colors, and textures, and each one has its own soup culture, the traditions, occasions, etiquette, and accoutrement for serving and eating soup. Even TV characters like Seinfeld's Soup Nazi. Soup is ubiquitous. It's featured on menus from diners to four-star restaurants. It's waiting for you on a supermarket shelf, ready to eat from a can, prepared in a cup, or from a cube, pouch, and packet. Soup has even gone to the moon, and of course, it's the backbone of soup kitchens because they are at once so economical and nutritious. From those humble origins so long ago, today there are hot soups and cold soups, clear soups and cream soups. There are soups for breakfast like Japanese miso soup, cold soups that are a perfect summertime lunch like Spanish gazpacho, even soups for dessert like Hungarian sour cherry medlavesh. I think I pronounced that correctly. If you want to mix things up a bit in your own kitchen, you can turn the remains of that roasted chicken into Peru's green chicken soup called aguadito de polo, flavored with cilantro and topped with limes. Two soups that are popular in the city these days are Vietnamese pho, a whole meal in a bowl, and Ukrainian borscht, made, of course, from beets. Soup's versatility makes it a great dish to use up any ingredient you have on hand. Just ask world famous chef Jacques Pepin, whose recipe for fridge soup is his own go to for a cold winter's night. By the way, to help you make his fridge soup yourself, along with the others I'll be showing you throughout, just click on the link in the chat that will enable you to get a free PDF of his and other recipes. But you don't need a fancy recipe. Making soup is super easy. Just like the folks in the stone soup fable discovered, you can make soup from just about anything. Just start with a pre-made stock or simply buy broth in a store. Add whatever meat, poultry, fish, vegetables you have around and seasonings you like. Simmer to reduce and concentrate the flavor. If you like, you can add a little milk or cream just before serving, or for a more textured result, puree it all in a blender. Now let's turn to a super popular dish that makes a perfect container for leftovers: eggs. Dishes made from eggs, like omelets in France and frittatas in Italy, have savory as well as sweet roots that trace to ancient Persia and Rome. Typically cooked in a stovetop skillet or baked, it's the eggs that act as the binder for the small pieces of meat and vegetables that make them all taste so good together. Enjoy omelets for breakfast, brunch, lunch, and a light dinner. We have Napoleon to thank for omelets being so popular in France. It's believed that he was served the very first known French omelet by an innkeeper in Bessières, France. Immediately enamored, Napoleon requested the innkeeper prepare omelets for his entire army, and the rest is history. The French pride themselves on omelets that are flat and golden yellow, like you see here, but their American counterparts, called Denver or Western omelets, are a bit crusty on the outside, and they burst with red peppers, ham, and other hearty ingredients. Omelets served in the rest of the world have their own distinctive colors, shapes, and sizes. Italian frittatas are big and round as the skillet they're baked in. Spain's tortilla de patatas are almost as white as the potatoes they contain. Korea's gyan mari is flavored with diced onion, ham, and sesame oil and rolled before it's cut into pieces. Iran's kuku sabzi is green and herby and sprinkled with bright red cranberries, while Japan's amu rice is stuffed with flavored rice and dressed up with, no kidding, a zigzag of ketchup.
Hukusabsi is one of my favorite foods.
Oh, I love it that you
It's
know
so
that.
good. Yeah.
Delicious, isn't it? And it's gorgeous too. Thank you for adding that. Many restaurants serve special omelets du jour, so I suppose you could enjoy a different one every day of the year. For your own everyday leftovers, try cookbook chef Julia Turshen's customizable kitchen sink frittata featured in her cookbook, Simply Julia. And after a special occasion like the Super Bowl, try a leftover game day egg bake of spicy buffalo wings and blue cheese. Rachel Ray is a big frittata fan too. She makes frittatas from, of all things, leftover pasta. Her pasta frittata looks something like a pizza, which she touts as fun and easy to make, and of course, great for any meal. To make frittata yourself, it's easy. Simply whisk together some eggs with cream and some seasonings, drop in whatever ingredients and leftovers you have on hand, and bake it right in the skillet until the eggs have cooked through. Our third dish is grain bowls, and they are being reinvented as we speak with a younger, health conscious eater in mind. I bet a lot of people listening today are into grain bowls. Did you know they were created in Central to East Asia? It's an ever adaptable dish that traces its roots to the Buddha and later on to the monks who would eat a balanced diet from simple ingredients collected in their bowls. Quite reminiscent of today's colorful salads, grain bowls are traditionally served in a simple, wide, flat bowl that shows off the variety of gorgeous textures and colors. Today, grain bowls are an Instagram favorite and served in Chipotle, Dig, Sweetgreen, and other hot restaurant chains. They're eaten for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and enjoy a growing following around the world, led by celebrity chefs and athletes who value their balanced nutrition. Now, it was Martha Stewart who coined the term Buddha Bowl in her 2013 cookbook, Meatless. As you can see here, though, grain bowls can be made with literally endless variations, such as the ones that many cultures have developed with their local flares. So let's dig into a Jamaica jerk chicken grain bowl flavored with mango and lime. How about a Moroccan chicken or lamb grain bowl seasoned with a special Moroccan spice blend? The Japanese have their donburi, consisting of slices of fish, chicken, or beef sauteed with vegetables, while the Koreans have their bibimbap topped with an egg. Grain bowls for breakfast? Why not? Tomorrow morning, try Gwyneth Paltrow's breakfast grain bowl topped with an egg featured in her cookbook, It's All Good. Perhaps you've tried some grain bowls that are trending now in the US, like the coconut quinoa salmon power bowl that LeBron James favors before a game, or a Hawaiian poke bowl inspired by Japanese rice bowls featuring fresh caught tuna. Or invent your own. It's easy. The first step in making a grain bowl is to pick a grain base like rice, quinoa, or barley. Then add veggies and any choice of protein that you have around, like meat, fish, legumes, or a veggie protein like tofu, falafel, or seitan. Drizzle on a dressing or sauce, and finally garnish with raw vegetables and add some crunch with panko or nuts. Now, let's go to China. Like the visual in the bottom left corner suggests, it takes a lot of hard work to grow rice. An ancient Chinese proverb warns against wasting even one grain. So it's not surprising that the Chinese developed fried rice over 1900 years ago. It all happened in the city of Yangzhou in eastern Jiangsu province. There, fried rice is still called chow fan, meaning saute meal. A quick and casual meal, fried rice is made with leftover rice and other often leftover ingredients, including many kinds of protein, for instance, and some like pork or chicken, and some form of vegetables like peas. And in the picture below, 100% vegan varieties are possible too. Traditionally, it's all combined in a wok and seasoned with soy sauce. Usually eaten for breakfast or lunch, fried rice is a typical Asian street food facilitated by a wok's high heat and portability. In America, fried rice has a long history stretching back to the California Gold Rush of 1849. The first known appearance on restaurant menus was the one you can see here from Harlem's Cotton Club in 1925. We Americans are not the only ones who can benefit by eating up every grain of rice. Fried rice has been traveling with the Chinese across all the other continents too. Now there are countless variations so everyone on the planet can use up not only the day-old rice, but all the tidbits left over from the rest of a meal. Starting with the images up in the top row, examples include Korean kimchi bokikimbap, Peruvian arroz chaufa, and Cuban arroz frito, and the Indian tawa pulao. Vegan? No problem. Fried rice can be healthy and satisfying when made from tender vegetables and crispy baked tofu, and even from cauliflower rice too. If delicacies are your thing, you can now order fried rice spiked with lobster or Wagyu beef. Trying to avoid fried foods? No worries. Top chef Stephanie Izard has a recipe for making fried rice on a baking sheet instead of a wok. Whether it's a simple dish prepped in the street or in the toniest of restaurants, fried rice is super simple to make. It just takes 4 steps. First, you saute some veggies or meat in a skillet or a wok, scramble in an egg to bind the tidbits together, and then mix in your day-old rice. And then add some favorite flavors like soy sauce or sriracha, and then garnish with cilantro or green onions. Now let's head to India and look at their favorite way to repurpose leftovers. You know curry. It's a stew-like dish consisting of fish, meat, vegetables, or lentils, all cooked in a sauce. But did you know that it originated in India in 2600 BC? Superbly capable of accommodating nearly any kind of leftover, curries can be flavored with spices similar to those in curry powder, which was popularized in the UK. But in India, curries are often made with the more pungent spice blend called garam masala. Thanks to the British, curries have spread around the world and have adapted to local tastes. But curries have a long, rich tradition in India, so let's start there. Across India, there are numerous regional curries. Starting up at the top center, examples include Goan pork vindaloo flavored with chilies, garlic, and vinegar. Puri masala is packed with boiled potatoes and lots of onions, spices, and lentils. And Punjabi lobia curry features black-eyed beans. The Jamaicans spice up their curry with a spice blend similar to jerk seasoning. In Thailand, they enjoy a red curry with typical flavors of lemongrass, Thai chili, and fish sauce. The Japanese savor their sweet curry with a thicker sauce, often containing unique ingredients like caramelized apples, onions, or even chocolate, vanilla, butter, and chutney. Curry has become popular in the UK because of the large numbers of immigrants from South Asia after World War II. It is now so ingrained in UK food culture that, believe it or not, chicken masala is Britain's national dish. Celebrity chefs create signature dishes from curry. Although its ingredients may sound exotic, curry can be rather simple to make. You start by cooking your protein or other main ingredients, add a blend of spices, followed by adding some broth or cocoa milk, and then some extra vegetables. Let them all simmer slowly until the smell is irresistible. Take some advice from UK celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay and go bold with your holiday leftovers this year. He advises forget soggy sandwiches and instead opt for a really flavorsome Thai turkey curry, bursting with zingy lemongrass, coriander, and chili. For the veggie conscious among us, he assures us that this recipe would work equally well with cubes of paneer for a vegetarian option or extra vegetables for a vegan curry. Our sixth dish is savory pies and tarts, those wonderful, comforting dishes baked up with a delectable open or enclosed crust filled with savory meat, poultry, fish, and or vegetable-based fillings. They have a long history stretching as far back as ancient Egypt and the Roman Empire. Thankfully, savory pies eventually migrated west to the US, Australia, and New Zealand and still provide us with a homey, nostalgic comfort food that continues to evolve in delicious and appealing ways. Savory pies are as American as well. Apple pie, first cooked with crusts that were actually inedible, pies have been served up by Americans as a tasty and comforting way to actually preserve foods, since our earliest settlers brought their recipes with them from Europe. We tend to enjoy slices of pie, but many people in the rest of the world like their pies served in a single portion, handheld and portable. Examples include Spanish empanadas, Greek spanakopita, Middle Eastern fatayers, and Indian samosas. All of these are likely predecessors to our own sandwiches, which didn't come along until 1762. Veggie tarts seem to be having a moment now, presumably because of diet and health trends. They're being boosted by Instagram because they are so photogenic. And one pie that's really a tart that all of us Americans love is, of course, pizza. And like we all know, pizza is a natural container for using up any of our leftovers. And a great example that I'll give you the recipe to is Jeffrey Zacharian's Everything But the Kitchen Sink pizza. Want to make a quick tart? Start with your favorite kind of crust, flaky, crumbly, or even store-bought. Roll it out in a dish and pre-bake it to avoid that soggy, undercooked dough. Then arrange your toppings on it, whatever you've got left over, and give it another bake. So let's move to our seventh and last but not least leftovers dish from the ancients, fish cakes. Technically speaking, fish cakes are typically made from leftover bits of seafood and typically a white fish like cod or haddock. It's ground up, combined with a starch like breadcrumbs or mashed potato and some other flavorful ingredients. Then it's fried to a golden brown. Originating long before McDonald's fish sticks were ever imagined, fish cakes are thought to go back as far as, believe it or not, 4,000 years ago in Asia, arriving in Europe as early as the 1800s. They're especially popular in the UK chip shops. Fish cakes made their way to New England, where they helped transform Saturday night's traditional cod dinner into codfish balls for a tasty breakfast. Today, what American can resist Maryland-style crab cakes? Israelis love their gefilte fish, a more finely processed fish cake mixed with matzah or challah that's poached in the skin of the fish. I'm not sure I can pronounce this, but the Scandinavians introduced fish to kids through their friskadeller, a white fish like cod served with a mayonnaise sauce. And the Brazilians and Portuguese love their bolahinhos de bacalhau, a Portuguese dish made from codfish, potatoes, eggs, parsley, onion, and nutmeg. Finally, in Thailand, the spicy seasoned Tod Mon Pla has an intense flavor due to the mixed in Thai curry paste and other strong seasonings like fish sauce, chilies, lemongrass, and makrut lime. With overfishing threatening many fisheries these days, it's absolutely crucial to not let any of this tasty protein go to waste. Thankfully, fish cakes make a great dish for any occasion or meal. Canadian chef and food waste advocate Christine Tizard loves hers made from leftover salmon and potatoes fried in a skillet. To make fish cakes yourself, simply mash together cooked fish with some sort of starch like potatoes or breadcrumbs. Add an egg to help bind it together, form little patties, and dip them in breadcrumbs or panko, and then just fry them up. There's plenty of inspiration out there, folks, for even more variations on these 7 great dishes. Just check out the numerous cookbooks that can help us explore these resilient creations further. This is just one example. Food writer Molly Watson, in her book called Bowls, offers 26 recipes for grain bowls, plus 90 more recipes for mix and match components. I hope by now you're not just hungry, but also curious enough to ask, what leftovers might I have on hand right now that I can reinvent in tomorrow's lunch? And how can I transform this year's holidays into something new and tasty? While you're eating your tasty creation to be, please think about some bigger questions about how we can all pitch in to help make ours a more leftover friendly food culture. So I will conclude by sharing my own top 3 wishes for using these 7 dishes to help engage our broader society in this mission. I'm sure you all have ideas of your own, and if anyone wants to share them in the chat, along with any favorite variations of the dishes I just went through, please feel free. Like all the ideas for all new policies, programs, and products, they all start by taking the form of a wish. So, Jackie, what do you wish for? Number 1, I wish that every child in America would learn how to transform their leftovers for life. In the past, children, of course, learned how to cook in their family's kitchen, helping out parents and grandparents in making family meals. Recipes were passed down from generation to generation. Memories were created as much as meals. Sadly, as we shift cooking responsibilities from mom and grandmom to take out and out of home eateries, as a society, we're losing our cooking skills. We have a Take Our Kids to Work Day, but perhaps we need a national Teach Our Kids to Cook Day. Maybe it should be a week or a month, and maybe it should be built around a lofty goal of making sure that every child in America graduates from high school knowing how to make at least one of these dishes as a lifetime go-to for their own leftovers. I wish every recipe published in America would come with tips for storing, heating, and transforming what's left over. Who better to help us understand how to best manage the leftovers than the food writers and the chefs who develop the recipes? Thank you, Melissa Clark of the New York Times, for doing this in many of the recipes that you share. And my third wish, among many more, is I wish that restaurants and cafeterias would insert tips for reheating and storage into every food delivery and doggy bag. Let's start by using up that valuable real estate that's on the inside cover of pizza boxes. As you can see on the left, Domino's in Australia already does this. What about the rest of us? So, thank you very much for listening and for sharing your ideas in the chat. to help empower all of you to go forth, experiment, and enjoy. I've prepared a free PDF of the recipes I showcase throughout this presentation. To request a copy, simply go to the link that should now be in the chat called wehatetowaste.com/leftovers and follow the instructions. Now, let's talk about any questions or comments that you may have and how we can all start to transform things right in your own home this holiday season. Emma, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks so much for taking us around the world with this presentation. I found it both informative and delightful.
Thank you.
I would like to share with you, let folks take some time to write some questions in the chat. I wanted to share with you while they're doing that I like using grain bowls for casual dinner parties. That way folks can customize what they're eating, and then if there are any leftovers, I can mix and match for leftovers and not get bored with them.
I think that sounds like a terrific idea, and everybody can take what they mix and match their own customized grain bowl. What a great idea.
Yeah, especially if folks have
Terrific.
allergies or, this sort of thing. It's really helpful.
Perfect idea. And people love grain bowls these days.
Yes.
Yeah.
Marjorie asks, Marjorie has heard that one should not reheat rice more than twice. Is this true? I've also heard you shouldn't reheat it at all.
Actually, I have heard that rice that's around a little longer is actually more healthful for you because of the I'm blanking on it, resistant starch that's actually has health properties for you. So I think I have seen those rumors, Marjorie, or those threatening emails or notices or urgent notices on social media about don't eat the rice and etc. But I have not been able to really understand the science behind all of that. And maybe it just relates to, the good old USDA guidelines that you shouldn't eat anything that's been out on the out from refrigeration for more than 4 hours.
I've also heard you should refrigerate rice and pasta immediately if you are going to use the leftovers. Don't let it set out for too long.
Right, right.
And Jane was asking about the PDF. I'm correct in saying if they go to the website, and they scroll down, there should be a place where they can request it.
Yes, yes. There'll
Okay.
be an email they can send a request to.
Okay, great.
And if anyone wants to reach out to me through that same email with any questions or comments, feel free to do that too. Thanks, Emma.
Yeah. Could you maybe share some of the spices and herbs you keep on hand to rejuvenate leftovers?
Sure. Well, I have your my spices are pretty wide ranging. So I have a lot of traditional spices that we here in America like in the holiday spices like rosemary and thyme and sage. But more and more, I'm interested in Chinese food. So I have uh, 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 garlic and soy sauce and some Indian food like spices like garam masala. I have za'atar and Aleppo pepper from the Middle East. So
Oh, Aleppo pepper.
yeah, so
Oh,
anything that
good.
just makes food a little more zingy and gives you a little more sense of adventure in the kitchen. I suggest that buying a $5 bottle of a brand new spice to try, and then looking up a recipe on the internet can help you extend your own culinary range and just make it that much more interesting in the kitchen.
I'll even add if not all grocery stores, but some will have a bulk section of spices. So you can get just like a tablespoon at a time to try. Sometimes delis have this as well. My deli back home has a bulk spice section. But yeah, just
There you go.
have
Yeah.
fun, experiment. Alana asks if one can use leftover proteins other than fish to make cakes similar to fish cakes.
Sure. And I think another way to look at fish cakes is the croquettes. So you can make ham croquettes and chicken croquettes and a lot of different kinds of croquettes, which is the same thing, but just it's not a cake, but more of a longer tubular form, rectangular form.
Mhm. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat here. Yeah, Jane noted it's handy to add leftovers to greens to make a salad. I do that as well.
Sure, that's not, as I said, I think our salads, our chicken salads and tuna salads and things are all descended from grain bowls initially. So, and
Yeah.
I've always found that foods, when you have a multiple different kinds of food all in the same dish, it's more delicious when those flavors meld than just having the chicken on one side of the plate and the spinach on the other and the potato separate. When you mix all the flavors, that's when you really get deliciousness.
I think so too. And I've had friends who it's very difficult for them to mix their foods, but if I make something that is mixed already, then they love that.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
Rachel asks about expiration dates. I don't know if you have that expertise of expiration dates versus use by dates or best by dates. Can you give us any insights on those?
A little bit because it isn't my expertise, but expir first of all, let's not call them expiration dates. That's what you'll find on perhaps on it will say it right on a drug. It will say EXP date or what have you. Basically, what you see on this in the supermarket is a best buy, a sell by, or a use before buy. So, as we all know, food is in a constant state of change. Just like, you buy a green banana and it becomes yellow and then it goes brown. It's constant change of ripening. So, the best by date is simply guidance letting people know when the food will be at its best. And a sell by date is a notice just for the retailers. It's a legal notice, I believe, for the retailers, letting them know, for example, that they should sell the milk by a certain date so that when the shopper brings the milk home, and we know that maybe a quart of milk stays around for a week. So the sell by date helps to ensure that the milk still stays fresh for that week while it's in your home.
Yes.
So please, everybody, follow what they call the sniff test and just use your own good judgment about whether food really is not acceptable to eat.
Yes, I was gonna say the same thing, and Marjorie wrote in the chat, use the sniff test.
And the sight test. And if it looks
Mhm.
icky and if things are growing on it, that's unfortunately a sign that the food hasn't been stored properly. When you store things, you really want to put it into a container that just is enough size for the food itself, so you don't have any extra air in that container that can start to break down the food. And if you can put the food into a freezer or even get one of those vacuum sealers to take out the air, your food will last a much, much longer time. And of course, some foods need to be protected from the freezer or you'll get freezer burn. So there's a little bit of a science to preparing and storing. And it's why one of my wishes is that every recipe in America comes with tips for proper storage, as well as reheating or even transformation.
Oh. Um, yeah, I mean, you just explained a bunch there, but you did mention during the presentation that most people don't know how to store food properly. Is there anything else, any other suggestions you want to share about storing food or different types of food? I really like
Yeah,
those.
what do you think? I mean, this it's such a big area. I would like to say this, and that is a lot of food actually tastes better the second or third day,
This
or
is true.
and a lot of these leftover dishes, one thing I don't know if I made it really clear, all of these 7 dishes that I went through represent perfect containers for leftovers, whether they have the eggs that act as the binder, you put them in the soup or the stew, the pie, the crust is the binder, or what have you. And many of these actually taste better on the second or the third or the fourth day because they've had a time for the flavors to meld. And some of us make recipes where it says make it the day ahead of when you intend to serve it so it will taste better. Well, that's just like leftovers in reverse.
Yeah. Um, Marjorie noted glass containers. I think this is true. Glass, just very briefly, scientifically, a lot of foods react with metal, especially foods that are high in acid, like tomatoes, for example. So it's good practice to store things in glass containers if you can.
I agree. And there's another benefit to glass containers, and that is you can see through them.
Yes.
And there's also a practice these days. I'd be love to see everyone raise their hands who are familiar with this, called Eat Me First, like having an Eat Me First shelf in your refrigerator so that those things that are stored in as leftovers are moved in the front of the refrigerator so that you could eat them first and you'll see them in those glass containers. Oh, look, I got to eat up that spinach.
Oh, that's a good idea. I hadn't heard of that before.
Right. Eat me is called an eat me first shelf or a drawer. And I also like Marjorie's idea about the small piece of paper towel. So when I bring greens home from the store, I don't wash them right off the hand. I only wash them when I'm ready to use them because they can rot with the water. And I kind of leave them out on my counter for a little while, and then I wrap them in a paper towel, and then I put them in those green bags that are breathable, so that the paper towel absorbs that excess moisture, and water, like air, can degrade food. So if things again stored properly, they'll last a lot longer, and you won't waste as much food or money.
A great idea. And Gloria Jean just mentioned erasable labels for glass containers. Gloria, I'm hoping you can share a link for those. Those sound very handy.
Yeah,
What?
I haven't heard of those, but certainly labeling, especially anything going into a freezer, is a good idea.
Yeah.
Date labeling on a freezer.
I actually keep both a pantry and a freezer list to make sure I'm using things I have and don't forget about them. Um,
I do too. I do too. I kind of think, I mostly cook at home these days because I think it's much more healthy and I love to cook. And so I think ahead to the week and say, oh, maybe I'll have this by Wednesday and this by Friday. It's not a rigid thing, but it's good to plan and then shop ahead for those things that you need to complement whatever it is you want to use up.
mm,
I see in the chat too, floating by here, is someone's bringing containers to bring to the restaurants. That's an
mhm.
excellent idea. And there are containers that are actually collapsible, so you can easily put them in your purse.
We have a couple questions about containers here. Do you have any thoughts on plastic containers such as the ones hummus comes in?
Um,
And Valerie, maybe you could say a bit more. Are you worried about microplastics, or something like this, or just that they're wasteful? Let's see. Well, she can add more. In the meantime, are the biodegradable bags that some produce comes in safe to store foods in? Do you know?
yes, they should be just fine. Those bags are likely compostable, technically compostable, and they should have a seal of approval on them suggesting they're compostable. And one of the things that makes them terrific for your compost and also for if you are interested in reusing them is that most of them are certified non-toxic as well, and that when they break down they will break down into food because they're made from a food substance, and they won't create microplastics in the environment.
Hmm. Okay, I got a little bit more information here from Valerie. So rather than recycling those, for example, hummus containers immediately, do we need to worry about forever chemicals when certain foods are stored in them? Um,
I'm going to stay away from that
yes.
one. I would tend not, I would think they were food grade, and that but I'm going to stay away from that one. I don't have the expertise.
Yeah.
I would think they
I
were okay to reuse. I would think they were okay to reuse, but I'm going to not go on record.
I definitely bare minimum would not use them as a container to reheat something in. Um, yeah, exactly.
I agree with not reheating them, but just washing them out, or and you have to want to, you also want, if you're going to reuse them for anything but the compost, you you want to make sure that they are sanitized too.
Yeah. I really try to avoid plastic myself, out of fear of microplastics and those sorts of things, the forever chemicals you mentioned. But I will say I save them for guests because then I can send them home with some leftovers and they don't have to worry about returning the container to me.
That's a lovely idea. I've heard that in the Philippines, there's like a tradition where you kind of almost have to send the guests home with the leftovers, and they have to accept them. And it's a really nice thing to think about because um, some people are shy about taking food, or they don't want to look desperate or something. So that if it's a nice tradition to give food away, and then if it's part of your culture to accept it, then you accept it, and it won't all go to waste throughout the society. It's a great way to distribute food throughout a society. I also like the idea of free refrigerators. Everybody familiar with refrigerator? We saw a bunch of them, hot
Yeah.
community fridges popping up around um, during the pandemic. At wehatetowaste.com, we had a story about a community pantry in England, which is worth looking at, and then seeing all the comments from people talking about the refrigerators in their communities.
Yeah, I really love sending my guests home with food and likewise I like accepting leftovers from friends. I think it's a really great way to nurture and take care of each other and
And with the holidays coming,
uh,
it's wonderful to think about sharing, getting together with neighbors. Sometimes that's the height of people's holiday weekend, is getting together on the Saturday after Thanksgiving and sharing the leftovers. I heard about that from a friend of mine who has that as an annual tradition, and they just love it in her community.
Oh, that sounds lovely. All right. Any final questions, folks?
I saw someone using in the chat using painter's tape as a way of marking the containers uh, with date labels and the contents, which is a great idea because then you could just flip it off.
And folks, I do apologize. Usually I say at the top of the hour, feel free to leave if you need to, and we'll send the recording around. And I see I'm well past the hour. So if you need to leave, feel free and we'll send the recording around.
This has just been a terrific experience. Thank you so much, Emma, for the opportunity to share these ideas and to get so many people together, especially around the holidays, to be creating more awareness for this important topic and to, help everyone realize that there's a lot of ideas out there and a lot of things we all could be doing and a lot of things we could be doing in our kitchens and a lot of things we can doing, like you said, Emma, to strengthen our communities, as well
Yeah.
as, of course, reduce food waste and to eat well.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a really lovely, informative presentation. Thank you to our guests. You were so active in the chat, asking questions and sharing ideas with each other. This is, again, a way to share knowledge and build community.
And how terrific to see from so many states and parts of the country where everyone from, you literally have a green America represented here.
We really do. It's
Fantastic.
very cool. Yeah, Florida, Tennessee, Virginia, New York, Ohio, North Carolina, Oregon, Minnesota, from all over. I won't read all of
Amazing.
them, but
Just amazing. And think how fast these ideas could spread this holiday season.
yes,
From the group that's here. It's in our power, everybody. Go out and share these ideas.
absolutely. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us today and being a part of Green America's climate action community. Together, we can make a real difference in creating positive change for our planet and its people. You can keep the momentum going and stay connected by subscribing to our newsletter to remain informed about our latest campaigns, events, and sustainability tips. Your support fuels our work toward a greener, fairer future. Consider donating today to help us continue our vital programs and initiatives, including these free webinars. Every contribution counts. Remember, your actions matter, and together we can build a more sustainable and just world. Thank you for your commitment to creating positive change, and we look forward to seeing you at our future events. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Emma. Bye-bye.